The Money in the Bank ladder match is a professional wrestling ladder match held by WWE. It was first contested in 2005 at WrestleMania 21 and was then exclusive to Raw Superstars. From 2006 to Euro 2010, the MITB match became a WrestleMania tradition, and had become open to all WWE brands. In July 2010, a second and third Money in the Bank ladder match was held in the same year as WWE debuted the Money in the Bank PPV. Unlike when the match took place at WrestleMania, this new PPV featured two ladder matches, one each for a contract for the WWE and World Heavyweight Championship respectively. Before the establishment of the annual Money in the Bank pay-per-view, wrestlers were allowed to use the contract to claim a match for any World Championship in WWE. After the establishment of the MITB PPV, wrestlers were then only able to challenge for the designated title related to their match. With the unification of the WWE and World Heavyweight titles into the WWE World Heavyweight Championship in December 2013, there is now only one single briefcase contract in play, which is for the now unified title. This went into effect beginning of the 2014 MITB PPV. Concept: the Money in the Bank ladder match can feature anywhere from 5 to 10 participants, with the objective being to retrieve a briefcase that is suspended 20 feet above the ring. The briefcase contains a contract that guarantees a match for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. While active, the World Heavyweight Championship as well as ECW's world title, the ECW Championship, were options as well. The contract is valid for 1 year, and the briefcase holder dubbed Mr. Money in the Bank can cash in the contract at the date, place, and time of his choosing. The briefcase may also be defended in matches, similar to how championships are defended. All of the briefcase holders have successfully defended and cashed in the contract except for Mr. Kennedy, John Cena and Damian Sandow. To date, John Cena has had the contract cashed in against him the most, as Edge, Rob Van Dam and Damian Sandow have all cashed in against him. Cena was also involved in both instances where the championship failed to change hands after cashing in the contract, once as the challenger, and the second time as champion. History: 2005. In WWE storyline, the concept for the Money in the Bank match was introduced in March 2005 by Chris Jericho. He pitched the idea to general manager Eric Bischoff, who liked it and promptly began to book the match for WrestleMania, naming Jericho, Christian, Chris Benoit, Edge, Shelton Benjamin, and Kane to participate in the match. Edge won the match. Edge once put it on the line in a ladder match against Matt Hardy. Edge used the contract at the January 2006 New Year's Revolution, defeating WWE Champion John Cena in less than 2 minutes directly after Cena had retained his title in an Elimination Chamber. 2006, the Money in the Bank idea was revived by Carlito on a February 2006 episode of Raw. Vince McMahon approved the suggestion and set up qualifying matches for the match that would take place at WrestleMania 22. It was later announced that the match was to be interpromotional, and SmackDown's general manager Theodore Long also set up qualifying matches to select 3 members of his roster to compete. In the Raw brand qualifying matches, Rob Van Dam defeated Trevor Murdoch, Shelton Benjamin defeated Chavo Guerrero, and Ric Flair defeated Carlito. On SmackDown, Finlay defeated Bobby Lashley, Matt Hardy defeated Road Warrior Animal, and Bobby Lashley won a Last Chance Battle Royal. Rob Van Dam won the WrestleMania 22 Money in the Bank ladder match after pushing Benjamin and Hardy off a ladder, while he was on another ladder, and retrieving the briefcase. That April, he defended the contract and won the WWE Intercontinental Championship in a contract versus title winner-take-all match against Benjamin at Backlash. RVD announced in May 2006 that he would cash in his contract at One Night Stand against Cena in an Extreme Rules match. The match ended with Cena losing after Rob Van Dam performed a 5-star frog splash. RVD is the first person to give prior notice to an opponent before cashing in his contract. He is also the only person to win the title in a match where the contract was cashed in with prior notice. 2007, the third Money in the Bank ladder match was held at WrestleMania 23, and was the first to feature 8 participants from Raw, SmackDown, and ECW. Qualifying matches began on the February 19 episode of Raw. On an episode of Raw, the two former Money in the Bank winners, Edge and Rob Van Dam, faced off, with Edge coming out on top to earn the first spot in the match. The next night on ECW, another cross-brand match took place, with CM Punk defeating Johnny Nitro to qualify. On that week's SmackDown, King Booker defeated Kane in a Falls Count Anywhere match following interference from the Great Khali to become the third man to qualify. On the next episode of Raw, Jeff Hardy pinned Shelton Benjamin in a match to become the fourth man to qualify. The next night on ECW, Mr. Kennedy defeated Sabu in an Extreme Rules match to earn the fifth spot. 2 qualifying matches took place on the next SmackDown, with Matt Hardy defeating Joey Mercury and Finlay coming out on top in a triple threat match against Montel Vontavious Porter and Chris Benoit to qualify. What was to be the final qualifying match took place on Raw between Carlito and Ric Flair. The match was deemed a no contest when the Great Khali interfered and attacked both men. The match was rescheduled for the next week on Raw, with Randy Orton bribing his way into the match, which was to be an elimination match. Orton pinned both Flair and Carlito after performing an RKO on each of them. Edge and Randy Orton had recently stopped teaming together, and there was a lot of tension between them. They both attempted to get the other taken out of the Money in the Bank ladder match. Both failed, as Edge ultimately won a last-chance battle royal after feigning injury to retain his slot. Orton was forced to fight Bobby Lashley on ECW to retain his spot. Mr. Kennedy won at WrestleMania 23, after ramming CM Punk off the ladder using another ladder. During the next few weeks, he kept declaring that he would cash in the briefcase at WrestleMania XXIV. Kennedy, however, suffered an injury, and on the May 7, 2007 episode of Raw, he lost the Money in the Bank briefcase to Edge. As of 2013, Kennedy is the only wrestler to lose the briefcase without cashing it in. The following night at the taping for the May 11, 2007 SmackDown, World Heavyweight Champion The Undertaker and Batista fought to a draw in a steel cage match, after which a returning Mark Henry assaulted Undertaker and left him injured in the ring. As Henry was leaving, Edge came to the ring with his briefcase, handed it to referee Jim Corderas, and defeated The Undertaker after 2 spears to win the World Heavyweight Championship for the first time. 2008. The fourth Money in the Bank ladder match took place at WrestleMania XXIV and was intended to be another 8-man match-up, consisting of wrestlers from Raw, SmackDown, and ECW. Qualifying matches began on the February 18 episode of Raw, as both Jeff Hardy and Mr. Kennedy qualified by defeating Snitsky and Val Venis, respectively, in singles matches. On the February 22 episode of SmackDown, Shelton Benjamin qualified by defeating Jimmy Wang Yang in a singles match. Back on Raw, General Manager William Regal placed Chris Jericho in a match against Jeff Hardy with the stipulation that if Jericho won, he would be in the ladder match. Jericho defeated Hardy in that match on February 25. The following week on Raw, however, the two faced off again, this time for Hardy's WWE Intercontinental Championship. Jericho won the match and title, and it was revealed that Hardy was suspended from WWE for 60 days for violating the wellness policy. He was subsequently removed from the Money in the Bank ladder match and WrestleMania altogether, making this ladder match a 7-man contest. Also on this episode of Raw, Carlito defeated Cody Rhodes to qualify. On a SmackDown ECW Live event on March 9, United States Champion Montel Vontavious Porter defeated Jamie Noble to qualify. On the March 11 episode of ECW, CM Punk defeated Big Daddy V to qualify. And finally, on the March 14 episode of SmackDown, John Morrison defeated his tag team partner The Miz to be the last man to qualify. At WrestleMania, CM Punk won the match after trapping Jericho's leg in a ladder and then climbing the ladder. Punk cashed in his title shot on the June 30 episode of Raw. A farewell speech by Jim Ross was interrupted by then World Heavyweight Champion Edge, who had him removed from the ring and then began to insult the crowd, saying that they will never get to see a World Championship being defended on Raw. When he was about to leave the arena, Batista came out and assaulted Edge in retaliation for Edge cheating to win their title match the previous night at Night of Champions. Punk then immediately ran to the ring with a referee to cash in his contract, then performed a go-to-sleep on Edge to win the World Heavyweight Championship, making it Raw exclusive in the process. 2009, the 5th annual Money in the Bank ladder match was announced for WrestleMania XXV. Qualifying matches began on the February 23 episode of Raw, in which CM Punk qualified by defeating The Miz and John Morrison in a triple threat match. On the March 2 episode of Raw, Kane defeated Rey Mysterio and Mike Knox in a triple threat match. On the March 3 episode of ECW on Sci-Fi, Mark Henry qualified for the match by defeating Santino Marella. Both Montel Vontavious Porter and Shelton Benjamin qualified for the match on the March 6 episode of SmackDown, defeating Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy in respective single matches. On the March 9 episode of Raw, Kofi Kingston qualified by defeating Chris Jericho, after Jericho was distracted by Ric Flair. Christian qualified the following night on ECW on Sci-Fi by winning a Tri-Brand Battle Royal. Finlay was the final person to qualify for the match when he defeated the Brian Kendrick on the March 13 episode of SmackDown. At WrestleMania XXV, CM Punk won the match and became the first wrestler to win 2 Money in the Bank ladder matches, and the only one to win the match for 2 consecutive years. On the May 1 episode of SmackDown, Punk challenged the World Heavyweight Champion Edge for a non-title match with the intent that if he defeated Edge, he would cash in his title shot right after the match. Later that night, Punk defeated Edge and attempted to cash in. However, before the ringside bell could ring to start the title match, Punk and Edge were both attacked by Umaga and Jeff Hardy respectively. As a consequence, the match never started and Punk retained his contract. Punk again tried to cash in for a World Heavyweight Championship match against Edge on the May 15 episode of SmackDown but was again stopped by Umaga. After Jeff Hardy defeated Edge in a ladder match to win the World Heavyweight Championship at Extreme Rules, Punk cashed in to win the World Heavyweight Championship for the second time, turning heel in the process. 2010, February April. On the February 22 episode of Raw, it was announced that the 6th annual Money in the Bank ladder match would take place at WrestleMania XXV. The first qualifying match was held later that night, where Christian defeated Carlito to qualify. 3 more qualifying matches were held on the February 26 episode of SmackDown, with Dolph Ziggler defeating John Morrison and R-Truth in a triple threat match, Kane defeating Drew McIntyre, and Shelton Benjamin defeating CM Punk to qualify. The March 1 episode of Raw saw both Jack Swagger and Montel Vontavious Porter qualify by defeating Santino Marella and Zack Ryder respectively. Matt Hardy was the next to qualify for the match when he defeated Drew McIntyre on the March 5 episode of SmackDown. In what was initially declared as the final qualifying match, Evan Bourne defeated William Regal on the March 8 episode of Raw to become the 8th competitor. Due to his favorable association with WWE Chairman Vince McMahon, McIntyre was given a third chance on the March 12 episode of SmackDown to qualify for the match. In what would also be made a WWE Intercontinental Championship defense by SmackDown General Manager Theodore Long, McIntyre defeated local competitor Aaron Bolo to qualify. On the March 23 episode of Raw, the number of participants was once again increased to a record 10, when Kofi Kingston defeated Vladimir Kozlov to qualify. At WrestleMania XXV, Jack Swagger won the match after knocking Christian off a ladder with the briefcase itself. The following night on Raw, Swagger attempted to cash in his shot against the WWE Champion John Cena after ambushing Cena. However, as Cena recovered too quickly from the ambush, Swagger cancelled his match and retained his contract. The next night, at the taping for the April 2, 2010 episode of SmackDown, after Edge attacked then World Heavyweight Champion Chris Jericho, Swagger cashed in his contract and successfully claimed the World Heavyweight Championship. November. In February 2010, WWE announced that Money in the Bank would be the title to their July 18 pay-per-view event at the Sprint Center in Kansas City, Missouri. The event included 2 Money in the Bank ladder matches featuring the Raw and SmackDown brands respectively. Unlike previous iterations of the match, the winners could only challenge for their own brand's World Championship. All 8 competitors for the Raw Brands match were announced on the June 28 episode of Raw by guest host Rob Zombie. The 8 competitors were Randy Orton, The Miz, R-Truth, Chris Jericho, Evan Bourne, Ted DiBiase, John Morrison and Edge. On the July 5 episode of Raw, R-Truth was involved in an injury storyline with The Miz and was subsequently removed from the match and replaced by Mark Henry. 2 days later, WWE announced 6 of the competitors for the SmackDown Brands match through its official website: Matt Hardy, Kane, Dashing Cody Rhodes, Christian, Kofi Kingston and The Big Show. On the July 9 episode of SmackDown, Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler both competed in qualifying matches and were added to the match. At the PPV, Kane won the SmackDown Money in the Bank match. Kane later cashed it in the same night by defeating Rey Mysterio to win the World Heavyweight Championship. He also became the quickest man to cash in the briefcase. For Raw, The Miz won that brand's Money in the Bank contract. After a couple of aborted attempts, Miz finally cashed in his title opportunity on the November 22, 2010 episode of Raw, immediately after Randy Orton successfully retained the WWE Championship against Wade Barrett, in which the Nexus attacked Orton before the match and injured his right leg. Miz went on to defeat Orton with a skull-crashing finale to win his first WWE Championship. 2011, WrestleMania XXVII was the first such event in 6 years that did not feature a Money in the Bank ladder match. However, a second Money in the Bank pay-per-view took place on July 17, 2011 at the Allstate Arena in Rosemont, Illinois. Raw's Alberto Del Rio and SmackDown's Daniel Bryan won their respective brands' 2011 Money in the Bank ladder match. At the end of the night, after CM Punk won the WWE Championship from John Cena, Vince McMahon ordered Del Rio to come in and attempt to cash in his briefcase against Punk. Del Rio came out to do so, but got taken out with a kick to the head, and Punk fled through the crowd. A similar cash-in attempt was performed on then-champion Rey Mysterio on the July 25, 2011 episode of Raw, but Del Rio was again unable to cash in the briefcase. However, Del Rio was able to cash in his briefcase and defeated CM Punk for the WWE Championship at SummerSlam on August 14, 2011. On the July 22, 2011 episode of SmackDown, Daniel Bryan announced that he was going to cash his contract in at WrestleMania XXVII. On the November 25, 2011 episode of SmackDown, Daniel Bryan cashed in on World Heavyweight Champion Mark Henry, who had been knocked out by The Big Show. Bryan got the pinfall victory and was awarded the championship. However, SmackDown General Manager Theodore Long overruled the match due to Henry not being medically cleared to compete, the first time a Money in the Bank cash-in match was reversed. Since the match never officially took place, Bryan was given the briefcase back and again reiterated that he planned on cashing in at WrestleMania XXVII. On December 18, 2011 at the TLC, Tables, Ladders and Chairs pay-per-view, Big Show defeated Mark Henry to win the World Heavyweight Championship. Bryan then cashed in his briefcase on Big Show to win his first World Heavyweight Championship, 2012. For the second straight year, a Money in the Bank ladder match didn't take place at WrestleMania. But a third Money in the Bank pay-per-view took place on July 15, 2012 at the U.S. Airways Center in Phoenix, Arizona. There were the usual 2 Money in the Bank ladder matches. However, the matches were no longer separated by brands. Instead, they were separated by championship. In the first match of the night, Dolph Ziggler defeated 7 other competitors to win the World Heavyweight Championship contract Money in the Bank ladder match. He would attempt to cash it in on that same night for a title shot against Sheamus, but was bro-kicked before the referee could call for the bell, so the match never started and Ziggler retained his contract. On the August 20 edition of Raw, Ziggler successfully defended his briefcase against Chris Jericho in career versus contract match. As a result, Jericho was forced to leave WWE. In the last match of the evening, John Cena defeated Kane, The Big Show, The Miz, and Chris Jericho to win the WWE Championship Money in the Bank briefcase when Cena used the briefcase to block Big Show's WMD knockout punch and subsequently used the briefcase as a weapon against Big Show, snapping the handle off the briefcase in the process with Cena in possession to win the match and the WWE title opportunity. This was Cena's first Money in the Bank ladder match. A special stipulation had been added beforehand that only former WWE champions could participate in the WWE Championship Money in the Bank ladder match for 2012. On the July 16, 2012 episode of Raw, Cena announced that he would cash his contract in the following week at Raw 1000. He became only the second wrestler after Rob Van Dam to give prior notice to the opponent. At Raw 1000, Cena failed to win the WWE title when Big Show interfered in the match, causing champion CM Punk to be disqualified and retain the title. This makes Cena the first wrestler to cash in a Money in the Bank contract and fail to win a title. During the December 3, 2012 episode of Raw, managing supervisor Vicky Guerrero was forced by WWE Chairman Vince McMahon to make Cena and Ziggler's match at TLC, tables, ladders and chairs a ladder match for Ziggler's World Heavyweight Championship Money in the Bank contract. On December 16, at the event, he successfully defended the briefcase with help from AJ Lee. On the April 8, 2013 episode of Raw, Ziggler cashed in his contract on world champion Alberto Del Rio, following Del Rio's handicap match win over Jack Swagger and Zeb Coulter. Ziggler defeated Del Rio to win his second World Heavyweight Championship following nearly 9 months of holding the briefcase. 2013, a fourth Money in the Bank pay-per-view took place on July 14, 2013 at the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. There were the traditional 2 Money in the Bank ladder matches, one for a WWE Championship contract, and the other for a World Heavyweight Championship contract. On the June 24, 2013 episode of Raw, CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, Randy Orton, Sheamus, Christian, Kane, and Rob Van Dam were announced by WWE Executive VP Stephanie McMahon as the participants in the WWE Championship contract match. Kane was later removed after being injured due to an attack by the Wyatt family on the July 8 episode of Raw. Orton went on to win the contract at the PPV. At the tapings for SmackDown on June 25, SmackDown senior advisor Teddy Long announced that the participants in the World Heavyweight Championship contract match would be U.S. champion Dean Ambrose, Fandango, Antonio Cesaro, Jack Swagger, Wade Barrett, Cody Rhodes, and Damian Sandow. Sandow would win the contract at the PPV. At SummerSlam, Orton cashed in his contract on WWE champion Daniel Bryan, who had defeated John Cena to win the championship. Orton defeated Bryan to win his 7th WWE Championship, after WWE COO Triple H, who was the special guest referee between Bryan and Cena, pedigreed Bryan, following 5 weeks of holding the briefcase. On the October 28, 2013 episode of Raw, Sandow cashed in his contract on World Heavyweight Champion John Cena. Cena defeated Sandow, making Sandow the second wrestler to unsuccessfully cash in the contract and the first to lose a cash-in match via pinfall. In December 2013 at the TLC PPV, the WWE and World Heavyweight Championships were unified into the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. 2014, a fifth Money in the Bank pay-per-view took place on Sunday, June 29, 2014 at the TD Garden in Boston. The original plan for the event was that the winner of the ladder match would receive a contract for a match for the now unified title as normal. However, on June 9, defending WWE World Heavyweight Champion Daniel Bryan was forced to vacate the title due to a neck injury, and so the already announced ladder match became for the vacant championship instead. On the June 17 episode of Main Event, Seth Rollins announced that in addition to the ladder match for the title, there would also be a traditional Money in the Bank ladder match for a WWE World Heavyweight Championship contract at the PPV, and that Rollins would be the first entrant. On the June 23 episode of Raw, Triple H announced 5 more entrants: Bad News Barrett, Dolph Ziggler, Rob Van Dam, Jack Swagger and Kofi Kingston. Later that night, Dean Ambrose was added to the match by Triple H per Rollins' request. Bad news: Barrett was later removed from the match due to an injury suffered at the June 24 SmackDown taping. Seth Rollins won the match and the contract after Kane interfered on behalf of the Authority and knocked Dean Ambrose off the ladder. He attempted to cash in the following night on new champion John Cena, but was stopped from doing so by Ambrose. Matches. Record, title matches, participant list, see also. Ladder match, WrestleMania, WWE Money in the Bank, references.